Welcome back to the Real Estate Girls podcast. We're your hosts, Heather and Kaci. Whether you're buying, selling, or just obsessed with the market, we're here to bring you expert advice, behind the scenes stories, and a dose of realness.
We got a fantastic episode lined up for you today. We're thrilled to welcome a special guest, someone who specializes in commercial real estate and is one of the top commercial real estate agents in our area.
Brian Hinton, manager, commercial sales at ERA Neubauer Real Estate. Brian Hinton, manager of commercial sales at ERA Neubauer Real Estate, brings a wealth of experience and dedication to the commercial real estate industry. He was born in Kentucky and raised in a small town just north of Evansville, Indiana. Brian began his early career in retail sales before becoming an entrepreneur, founding two businesses, including the acquisitions of a Florida-wide suntan lotion distribution ship. His connection to Panama City began in the early 1990s and became permanent in 2002 after a visit with a longtime friend led him to relocate and launch his career in real estate. Drawing on his background working with business owners and retail professionals, Brian chose to specialize exclusively in commercial real estate, a focus he has maintained throughout his career. Brian is a past president of the Central Panhandle Association of Realtors 2021 and has served multiple terms as a board director. His commitment to industry advancement includes years of service on both the commercial and legislative committees with Florida Realtors. In addition to his professional accomplishments, Brian is an active member of the Kiwanis Club of Panama City. He has held multiple leadership roles, including club president, board director, and lieutenant governor for Florida Kiwanis. He has also dedicated over 15 years to delivering Meals on Wheels for the Council of Aging. A man of many talents, Brian is no stranger to the stage. He has performed in numerous productions at both the Martin and Kaleidoscope theaters and has entertained the community as a karaoke DJ for many years. His love for performing reflects his natural, outgoing, and service-driven personality. In 2008, Brian met his wife, Lori, an ultrasound technician from Northwest Alabama. Together, they enjoy being Mimi and Pop, and their 5 beloved grandchildren who live in Houston, Texas, and Atmore, Alabama. Brian and Lori love entertaining, cruising, and spending time on the water when time allows. Brian also enjoys hitting the golf course any chance he gets. Brian, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
My pleasure. What a wonderful introduction. Thank you.
So, Brian, I am curious about this Florida-wide suntan lotion business.
I sold to retail. I didn't have a retail business. I sold products that retail stores would put in their stores, traveling all around the Midwest with national accounts and regional accounts, selling stuffed animals, greeting cards, Christmas ornaments, the little statues that say, "I love you this much." Now, this was, I hate to give away the age, but this was the late 70s, early 80s. And in doing so, I met a gentleman that was starting up a suntan lotion company. He was affiliated with Johnson & Johnson, and it was a high-quality product. And he wanted me to sell it to stores for him. But the trick was I had to buy into the distributorship for the state of Florida.
Okay.
So I'm helping invest in getting this product off the ground. And I came down here and opened up distribution centers and hired people with vans, and we went around to about 500 retail locations with the product in them that I owned as a distributor. And then they went bankrupt and couldn't make any more product. So I just got stuck with a lot of suntan lotion and met some nice people in Florida, and certainly nice ones in Panama City. So, that's the end of that story.
Yeah, and so that's what led to your career in commercial real estate.
Right.
Okay. Tell me more about that. What got you into it? What conversations did you have with your friend who got you into
Well,
that?
the friend that I mentioned was actually the guy that I brought from Evansville to open the suntan lotion distributorship here in Panama City, have a warehouse. He would work here. Then I went other places in the state and did the same thing. Well, he had met a future wife and future companion and decided to stay in Panama City, even though the Tanana suntan lotion, which was in a yellow banana, was not going to be our future. He stayed here. When I came back to visit him a few years later, then he convinced me to come back here and start. He wanted me to start a real estate company, and he would do other things related to real estate development.
Is that, and obviously you had years and years of sales experience at this point. I mean, how many years were you selling product? I know you did, you said stuffies at one point and then suntan lotion.
After the aforementioned suntan debacle, I went back to Evansville for a few years and started a sales training company, which I wrote a sales training course and had it, and then I would facilitate it throughout that general area. At the same time, I did a fitness show, like a home and boat show, only it was a fitness show annually and bridal show annually, and was kind of piecemealing a living. Not doing so bad, had a house. But when I visited him, he kind of convinced me I was in that place in my life where it was like, okay, making a move is a cool idea. And who doesn't love Panama City?
Yeah, absolutely. Thomas is actually from Evansville.
Who?
My husband, Thomas.
Really?
He's from Evansville, Indiana, and we have a farm in Kentucky. So I didn't
No
even
kidding.
know this until obviously Heather did a lot of research.
What part of Kentucky?
And we have a farm in Greenville, Kentucky.
Greenville's where my stepfather came from.
Oh my gosh.
Well, Greenville, Central City are right next to each other.
Central City. There's a good
Home of the Everly Brothers.
Yes.
Yes,
and
come on.
There's a good Mexican restaurant, El Bracero or whatever we eat at in Central City. And then, but we got married at the Country Plantation House in Greenville.
I've been there.
So if you know where that's at, yeah, we have a farm there, and we're actually going there on vacation. Well, not vacation. We're going hunting.
It's a small world after all.
It is. Yes. So I was like, I cannot believe he's from Evansville.
He was from Evansville, though.
He was from Evansville, and now his father still lives northern Kentucky, well, north of Greenville. So he doesn't have any
near
family.
Owensboro, probably.
Yeah. Is it Lexington? I'm really bad.
Oh, Lexington's way east.
Okay, then
That's
wrong.
where all the horses are.
It's
Beautiful
just
country.
North. I can't remember the town.
Yeah.
It's 30 minutes north.
Okay.
But no family that I know of now still in Evansville, but he went to school there, and he has some really interesting.
I may know some of his people, although it would be a generation above him.
Yeah. So we'll have to connect you guys. So how long have you been in the commercial real estate business?
22, 23 years.
Wow.
You're in Big County.
And why commercial? What I guess made you go into commercial like full time instead of a residential?
Well, right from the start, I was dealing with business owners, and I enjoyed that level of conversation, the level of management that helped me develop my career. And then also, I think having been an entrepreneur myself and a great knowledge about retail, I felt like leasing was an area that I could learn a great deal about and help with, be successful with.
Is that where you started, was actually leasing?
Pretty much how I got kind of my feet in
Right.
the ground, on the ground, if you will. There's a lot of aspects, commercial real estate. This is not a big market per se. If you go to Atlanta, Birmingham, other cities, even perhaps Tallahassee, a commercial real estate practitioner might be a industrial specialist or a leasing specialist. And then he might only be an office specialist versus a retail leasing specialist because there's that much opportunity on a larger scale. I quickly learned here I needed to know about all those things, but also how to sell vacant land and existing buildings because there's just not that big a market. We have 200,000 in Bay County, and it just doesn't promote that type of niche marketing within commercial real estate. Commercial real estate in itself being exclusive puts you in one of 25 practitioners out of close to 2,000 in a 5-county area.
Right, 2,500. And I know there's, you have over, close to 2 million licensed realtors, and only about 20% even, dabble in commercial real estate. And that's why we see your signs all over the town for sale. Do you do any residential at all, or strictly commercial?
No, I mean, if someone that I know says, Brian, help me, I need a house, I'll refer them to a partner who is a residential professional.
Wow.
And unless they say, I want to buy this house and we've already agreed on everything. Is this contract look okay? Then I don't feel bad about helping them. But I don't want them to lose any opportunity based on my lack of knowledge of the components of a residential transaction. Because, you know, not everybody, a lot of people think that the commercial transaction is more complicated. It's intimidating in some ways. It's not. It's just the nuances of that you need to know, as opposed to the nuances of dealing in the residential contract or the residential environment, because there's a lot of factors that are no more complicated. You just need to know them,
Right.
you know.
That leads me into my next question. How does commercial real estate different from residential in terms of day-to-day work? Some of those nuances that you were talking about.
Well, as mentioned, I think I'll get on a soapbox from my sales training days. Our job in sales is not to talk people into things. That's not professional selling. Professional selling is matching a need with a product or a service with a need. So we investigate their need, and then based on our knowledge of the market, find the right fit. And the illustration of that fit is where the selling comes in. You don't recommend the things that aren't a match. You know your business well enough to pull from an inventory and match it. And so in commercial, it's the same work, only our language is a bit different. Instead of knowing where the best schools and neighborhoods and parks and dollars per square foot of residential sales and what components represent that dollar per square foot value, you just learn those things in commercial. You learn density of a parcel based on multifamily. Can you get 20 units an acre or 5? And you learn things like retention ponds have to be so big based on the size of the building, then how much parking you have to have. When someone says, can I put my boot store on that 1 acre parcel? Well, how big of a building will I need? Or can I get away with? So then you just start to draw from your experience of learning those particular aspects instead of learning the other aspects that would be more relative to residential. Not any really more complicated, just different.
But I do think there is a tremendous amount of value listening to you speak and saying, I do strictly commercial, because obviously we've both done commercial. We've sold commercial properties, not on the scale that you have. But you're saying, I do commercial. So if you have somebody that is looking for a commercial property and wanting to know the ins and out of it, the numbers, the investment potential, obviously I would want to go to you because you do this full time, strictly commercial.
Wow.
You're not doing residential on the side. This is what you do. You've done it for 22 years. So are there any particular sectors, retail, industrial, office, that are trending right now in 2025?
Well, retail is trending. It's just trending in the wrong direction. I think we've got enough car washes and
gas stations,
convenience stores.
Yes. Gas stations. Why are all these gas stations popping up?
Because
everywhere?
most of them are funded by national organizations, big money that can amortize their cost over a number of locations. And our properties after Hurricane Michael and the recovery of Hurricane Michael, people were seeing, okay, a building got scraped and they're not going to come back, and now I want to sell my vacant acre on 23rd Street. Where the early part of my career here, first 15 years or so perhaps, a vacant commercial piece of property that wasn't wet might go for $425,000 on a fair market. Now suddenly everybody's asking $800,000 to $1 million for a 1 acre parcel, but they're getting it because there was interest in our market following the hurricane to get those prime position corners that would have never been available otherwise.
Right.
So then when people seeing, well, this guy got $1 million for his acre, I want $1 million for my acre.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and just like people who think, well, they got 500 for their house, I want 500.
That's
Well, then you know that, but then you know how to help them understand the differences. That acre had good elevation. You had to bring fill dirt in.
Yeah.
It didn't need the back porch fixed, or it did because it had trees to be removed. And you can start taking a price and make sense of it on how you can make the subject you're talking about compared to that price they see. And sometimes just the fact that it's on that corner, just like it would be if it was on the lake, or if it would be if it was on
The bay.
the bay, is going to justify twice the square footage price, perhaps. And the condition of it, well, we were dealing with mainly no condition, buildings that were scraped and gone, so that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
But it's hard to evaluate sometimes when you see a commercial building. You have to determine how and why would that be, what's the right price to put that out on the market for.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things that we all do is help people understand that we want to help them get the price that it's actually going to be able to sell for. And we know that no matter what, they're probably going to have to get a loan of some kind. And certainly there are cash buyers, but as a general rule, if it's not going to appraise, just like a house, same thing in commercial, then the transaction's not likely to go through. But the banking conditions are a lot more, lot stricter in commercial.
Right. And touching on that, what are the interest rates looking like for commercial versus, residential, obviously, the national average, you're around, 6.75 approximately. In this area, we're a little lower, we're around 6.5. But commercial, I would imagine they would be higher than that, correct?
Well, that's probably a good rule of thumb. It's
Okay.
probably a good rule of thumb to suppose that a commercial loan is going to be 20% higher if you're just talking about the interest rate. So instead of 6, it's going to be 7.5. But what a lot of people don't realize about a commercial loan is that if you're buying a piece for development, whether you're going to put apartments or a big building, you're probably going to have a construction loan. So I got to build my building, and at $300 a square foot now, you're talking about $600,000 to put a 2,000 square foot building in the air. Well, the bank's also going to let you borrow that money, but you'll have to have 50% down on the improvements or the construction loan, 50 or 60. Depends. I mean, so it's a lot. You got to bring a lot of money to the table to start off from scratch. But now different banks at times will offer different specials or packages where they may allow 80% construction. But you're dealing with people that have excellent credit, excellent funds. So it's not like they're as picky about what's your credit score.
Right.
It's about the risk the bank has in the entire project. And if you bring a project to them that they don't like so much, they feel it's a little riskier.
Yeah.
Then you may have to come to the table with 50% just to borrow the rest of it in construction. If it's a McDonald's, they might do 80%, 90%.
Yeah.
It's all about the different circumstances of the project as well.
We're seeing in the residential market higher inventory, more days on market. How's the state of the commercial market, would you say?
Well, I think perhaps like residential, we look back at a time in the recovery from Hurricane Michael, and we saw such a brisk sales and such activity. We're certainly not, I feel the market is not a brisk market by any means. I think the conditions of borrowing money being tougher the last year or so has impacted that much like it's impacted residential. I'm not personally seeing the interest in vacant parcels that I've seen, even I would say on average over the last 20 years. I think that there are people who have been hesitant to make those kinds of multi-million-dollar decisions based on where we might be going with interest rates or as an economy or a number of factors. But one of the big factors is it's cost so much to build. After Hurricane Michael, everybody related in development related services, whether a guy that brings the fill dirt or, and I don't mean anything bad against any of these folks. I mean, but their prices have doubled. Yeah. Whether it's an architect or a land engineer or heck, just about everybody. Okay, because everybody could get that. And now we've got to have the market force those prices back down to where, the cost to build makes a project doable. And at the same time, our landowners are still wanting that same $1 million an acre. And they're going to have to see that was everything's always been cyclical. Perhaps it would be worth that to someone, but not to the average buyer. I mean, the banks and the gas stations, they can pay a little more because, again, they're more funded. And it can amortize over lots of locations. So
I remember we built our house, our personal home, in 2020. Great deal. I mean, great prices. I think let's see, we probably completed the beginning of COVID. And then, but to build our same house, it would probably be double right now. The price of lumber, everything's gone
Right,
up.
concrete, lumber, doesn't matter.
Right.
All of it's double.
You know, inflation's what, 2.7% approximately. So I know the Fed wants it below 2. So that makes sense. So basically you were saying vacant land is not moving because the cost associated with
I
building.
don't see near the activity at all on new development. Now, you see a senior housing development coming up on Highway 390 across from Sweet Bay. I sold that parcel, and that was under contract for 2 years.
I saw, yeah.
So
I
that
seen your sign.
the time by which the trigger was pulled, if you will, and the money started being arranged was at a much stronger market. Fortunately, they were committed to the project. They already had their government funding, so that project is going through. And I know that there's always going to be that Pier Park's growing. You know, there's interest in Highway 77, 79, all along I-10. I hear of things that are coming in, talking about coming in. I haven't seen, though, in Bay County where a typical vacant commercial property is getting the same looks with the same amount of people who have a project in mind that are looking to get something done, calling about the price, calling about, you know, how much of the acreage is actually usable, you know, stuff like that.
When you do these listings, and before I ask that question, are you primarily like a listing agent, or do you represent both? Or I mean, I see your signs everywhere, so I know you have a lot of listings.
Well, I think one kind of begets the other. I mean, just like it does with homes.
Right.
I didn't desire to be one or the other, but if I have a listing, I'm likely to meet those who are looking. And if that particular property doesn't fit for a number of reasons, if I'm driving by a vacant property, house, you can pretty well see what you got. I can tell if it's kind of a monster 6,000-7,000 square foot house or if it's 1,600, right? Vacant property, sometimes it's hard to tell whether that's an acre and a half or is it 3 acres or is it more or is it wet because they've let it kind of get grown over and you don't realize that half of it is unusable or you'd have to mitigate to make that more usable at $30,000 an acre to mitigate. That adds up pretty quick. So it's harder to tell. So you get calls and people who are they're driving through from Georgia on their way to the beach, right? And they go, hey, you know, I see that property on 23rd Street. Huh? How much is it?
I've gotten calls on that.
Yeah.
I've gotten at least 3 calls on that.
Yeah.
I don't know, the last 8 months or whatever.
Right.
And then you send them the listing with the price. They're like, oh, yeah, never
Yeah.
mind. I mean, it looks great. But, I mean, you're going to pay top dollar for 23rd Street.
And, you know.
How long are your listing agreements normally?
Well,
Because these deals obviously could take, like you just said, years.
well, once you get engaged in a contract, the listing agreement kind of becomes just along for the ride.
Right.
But I try to secure a 6-month listing agreement.
Absolutely.
And try to help folks understand that once we get a contract or an interested party and we're negotiating, that the length of time by which that contract is going to be in place before it closes is going to be considerably longer than the residential contract. Average time just for the inspection period, 90 to 120 days. And then they want a permitting period for another 90 days. And then they want 60 to close.
Right.
And people go, well, that's crazy. No, they need all of that time.
Yeah.
That's how long the process takes.
That's how long the process takes to make sure what I can build will go on that property. I got to hire an architect, and he's got to do a design, and I got to go to the city or the county and find out what they'll allow, how much parking I will need for this project, how big a water retention I need, and then after I get a study that tells me if the land is all usable or if it has wetlands or if it's got other things we don't want to talk about, like Bay County crayfish or something.
Yeah.
You know, so there's so many things that you have to spend money to find out whether or not residentially, and certainly I'm not making light of it, but get you an inspection, get you a structural engineer out there pretty quickly, you know. But land that's never been developed takes a long time. Now, if it's a commercial sale of a doctor's office on Jinx, well, no, and they're still probably going to want 60 or 90 days and then 45 to close because it's just a bigger decision, gathering more money, arranging more with their banks.
So if I were a buyer looking to purchase a commercial property and build on commercial land, do you typically keep a list of recommended vendors and walk all your buyers through this if it's, say, the first time that they've ever done this?
I always is a bad word. I generally keep a somewhat of a running catalog of what I know to be available because it's listed, and what I know to be available because an owner has told me that they might be interested in selling. And I will send somebody who's interested or has talked to me, introduce himself to me. Again, something that matches pretty close to what their objective is. I don't send them every vacant piece of land between here and Pensacola.
Yeah.
About what they have in mind and about the price range, about the size. And I create instead of a marketing flyer of just one piece, it might feature 10 or 7 pieces with just enough information, parcel size, zoning, and then hope to go further down that list and narrow it down to something that might really be something we want to talk about more.
Yeah, and guide them through that process. I've always been told, and I could be wrong on this, but I've always been told that a commercial buyer is called a sophisticated buyer. So I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, so I suppose then the commercial practitioner is a sophisticated practitioner. So there you have it. That's dispelled immediately. So at the end of the day, I think the commercial buyer in the eyes of the state of Florida and the laws that govern dealing in real estate, that language is in there, that the commercial buyer is expected to be more of a sophisticated buyer. Therefore, the laws don't have to protect that buyer like they do a residential buyer who may only do that once or twice in their lifetime, and therefore not be as capable of making decisions based on contractual language. But the commercial, it's expected for them to be able to work their way through their inspection period or due diligence with no, well, we got to tell you about this and we got to show you this disclaimer. Your inspection period is your inspection period. And you're responsible for hiring a structural engineer if it's a commercial building, or having the air conditioning, HVAC inspected, anything that has to do, because it's your decision completely. There's not much help for the commercial buyer other than to have a good broker or agent help them if they're not as familiar with these things. But I've learned most of what I've learned over the years from the people that I met that were buying. I mean, they've done this before.
They know the risks.
They know they do. And then, they have a better understanding of what it takes to build their building than I do, probably. Now, over years, I learned from dealing with a number of different kinds of them. But that's completely different than, say, the real estate investor. That's a whole nother conversation for another day, perhaps.
Well, yes. In the real estate commercial investor, what mistakes do you commonly see that they make?
Well, that's a huge
that's
question.
That's what you come in.
Well, I disagree. I don't think you guys are great professionals as well. We know that we don't have all the right answers. We try to draw on our experience to help them understand the numbers that are coming at them. And it's not much different in real estate investing. You're only investing in real estate to make a return, right? That's the only reason. Whether you're buying a triplex or a small apartment complex or a little strip center, what is that going to return on my money? That's the whole key, right?
Right.
I could leave it in a money market and maybe get 4%, 5% sometimes. But if I invest in real estate, the only way I'm going to make money is if there's income on it, or if I sit and hold it long enough that it doubles in price because I simply held it that long, right? And then what did I really not gain over all those years that I waited for it to double? Because I paid property taxes and insurance, and what could I have done with that money in the meantime that might have made more?
Right.
That's another whole direction. I'm taking that. But as far as looking at a piece of real estate, investment real estate, the biggest mistake is that people believe the numbers they first see. Okay, this has got an 8% return. And I'm not implying that practitioners or people would be misleading with telling you it's an 8% return, but you need to make sure that that is a true net income. I don't think they're hiding some of their costs. So they probably got the numbers in there, but the biggest mistake I see is that people don't add 10, 15% to what the amount is that you say you're making. Okay, take 10 or 15%, set it aside as a reserve for future maintenance or for downtime.
Deferred costs.
You remember when we did for our license, there was what do you call an equation that was real long. We had to learn to get our license, right? All those things in there are potential cost that it's like property taxes, okay? If the apartment building nets $100,000, you didn't make $100,000. You got to pay property taxes, insurance, do all of those things. Okay, so all those layers of cost, are they really real, sustainable? Will they happen again each year? How much turnover are you going to have where the income's not coming in regularly? One tenant leaves, are you down 4 months? There's a lot of factors that you have to give a buffer there. So I want to make sure that when you make your investment, take the numbers that are made in rents and then shake that thing down to where you really have a really reliable net income, and then divide that into your cost and see what your return is. And most of the time, it's a couple percent lower than people thought when they first looked at the project. That's generally what happens. They ask me about it. I go, well, no, really, I think you're really only going to make 4% on this. And so that's the mistakes.
And I know we've talked about this on the phone because we've listed commercial properties together, and like the short-term rentals on the beach are not doing well. I mean, they're not, which is why you see, we've had appraisers on that said you see a declining market on the beach. But it's similar in the sense that we're running the numbers for insurance, taxes, short-term property management, take 15, 25%.
Assessments, unforeseen assessments are a big deal.
So, and I know, you've talked about how you have listings, and once you share those real numbers.
Yes, the real numbers.
They just use like crickets, right?
They're gone.
But if you're the investor, you have to have the real numbers,
exactly.
or you're only kidding yourself.
And I mean, I get calls all the time. I want a 10% return net. I go, good luck.
Well,
because I haven't seen it. I saw it during COVID and right after COVID because I found it, but I don't see it in this market.
Well, the interesting thing is that return is if I have the money to invest. It tells me instead of putting it in a money market, this is what I could do with this money. But a lot of people are borrowing money to buy into investment real estate.
And that's why it doesn't make sense, because they're paying that interest.
Exactly. Well, they're paying the principal and interest, and it really takes the margin down.
Right.
But hopefully in that case, their banker has explained the math, because the banker shouldn't approve the loan.
Right.
If the math doesn't
that
make
makes
sense.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're not making a profit or you're upside down, you're probably not going to get approved for that loan.
Switching gears a little bit, can you walk us through the process of leasing a commercial space from both landlord, tenant perspective, and how is it different from actual sales of commercial?
Well, leasing is one of those fun areas that I think we have to do to be good practitioners in our industry. It's actually more work and more stress for a lot less money than just selling stuff. But it has to be done. There's many folks, the leasing industry, the income producing industry is a huge part of commercial real estate and should always be and will always be, I think. But a lot of people are running a bit scared of the whole leasing thing. Again, it's not that complicated. It's not that difficult. The biggest problem that comes in the leasing end is the language that's used to market leases. Oh, it's only $16 a square foot. Well, that's not true at all. Yes, that's the base rate. But then if you have 10,000 square feet and $16 a foot, $160,000 a year, divide that by 12, there's your monthly payment. No. It's if you see the net, that means besides the base rent, you're also going to be obligated as a tenant to pay a portion of the property taxes of the whole building, whatever percentage of the building you're using. If you're only using 10% of it, You're going to pay 10% of the property taxes and the insurance and the maintenance costs for the parking lot and the security lights and lawn guy that comes once a week or whatever. And you're also going to pay a tax on state that Florida charges for a tax on leased income. It's down to 4.5% now. It used to be 7.5%. And it's going lower again January 1st. But these are pass-through costs. So the landlord is not making any money on these things, but he's passing his cost on to the tenant. So he expects to make $16 a square foot. That's what's being marketed. So instead of it really being $16 a foot, it's probably going to be $21 a foot. Oh, wow. Now, if you go to Pier Park, they want $48 a square foot, and it's going to be $60. I mean, the numbers are all relative, but at the end of the day, you just understand what the landlord or owner expects to pass through to his tenant. And I wish that we marketed them, here's your monthly payment. Okay? You know, if you just took the $15 per square foot, you think it's $2,500 a month, it turns out to be $4,000 a month. You know, to me, that's a little difficult for people to absorb. But that's the way the industry works. Now, we get paid only on the base rent amount as a rule. But if you have a property and you're going to be the listing agent for a lease, and a realtor from a larger market sends a tenant in who's a national tenant, you're thrilled. It's great because we'd like to have a national tenant, more likely to pay the rent and survive. Nothing against local tenants at all.
You're saying like a Chick-fil-A or like something that's national.
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody
Right.
that's got
Walmart,
200 stores.
Publix. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, some auto tune or something that you can Google them and they've got 300 locations and they want one in Panama City.
Gotcha.
Would you rather lease to them because their business model is probably a lease? Mm-hmm. They don't even want to buy their properties. And so practically every AutoZone is that way. Every Dollar General is that way. So you see that kind of tenant and you go, okay, I'd like to have them here, right? Just because there's less chance of turnover, less chance of downtime. The longer the lease, the more apt you are to negotiate a lower price. I'm going to be here 10 years. I don't have to risk finding a new tenant every year. So all those things will maybe help you negotiate that $16 a foot down to $12, perhaps, or do something creative where it escalates over time. But it's all about the strength of the tenant and the length of the lease that they propose. But once you know that, you can see that if you've agreed on $15 a foot, then you're going to add those pass-through costs. And you're going to pay that monthly, but it's based on so much per square foot times the space that you're using as an annual number divided by 12.
And so are you doing leases right now? Or
Absolutely.
Okay. And
when new sales get tough, leasing gets better.
Absolutely.
Because they're not making a move on a multi-million-dollar decision to build a new location, take that risk. They just renew where they're at, or even though they'd like to grow, they might go find a bigger place to rent. And, you know, it's always been that gap, you know.
You're getting paid, so.
Right, right.
I remember we were headed back from Kentucky, a hunting trip, and this is when I was getting calls for all the solar panel companies, you know, you're trying to sell solar, not a big fan of solar. And I got another one, right? And I answer, oh, this is so-and-so, a solar panel X company, whatever. And I was nice. I don't think I stayed on the phone. I didn't stay on that long at all. I just said, hey, I'm not interested, thanks, hung up. I got a text. No, I was trying to find a lease on 77. I'm interested in this active listing, but I won't be using you. Oh, I just literally blew it because I thought it was this, you know.
They were trying to sell something.
What was so funny was a month later, I saw their solar panel sign on their, at that listing. I'm like, wow, man. But,
we've all had something similar happen, I'm sure.
Yes.
But when you sell these properties, I guess too, if it's already built or whatever, do you offer that as, oh, I'll lease it out for you as well? And kind of.
Well, of course.
Absolutely. So you can
yeah.
get paid on that sale and then get paid
Well,
to
certainly if somebody's wanting
negotiate
to,
that lease.
somebody's wanting to buy a building and turn it into income producing property, then I'm going to hope to get the opportunity to help them fill that space.
And do you
Sure.
get paid when you lease it out, or you get a percentage
Certainly.
every month?
Certainly. Well, no.
How does that
Well, that's
work?
a great question.
Yeah.
And I started going there a minute ago, but I lost
I'll
my
go
track.
there. I'll go
So
there,
if a
Brian.
guy, if a broker from Birmingham calls you about your property that's for lease, and he's got this national tenant that wants to come to Panama City and they want to look at that space, oh, now they want to lease it. And they're going to give you a 10-year lease. That broker wants to be paid for that 10 years all up front at once. That's how the leasing generally works.
Wow.
So your owner is kind of in a bind sometimes where
That's a lot of money.
he's putting out more money to pay the broker's commission than he is getting in his security deposit in the first couple months, first month's rent. So,
But it's 10 years.
yeah. But now, what if what if they bolt, they leave, they go bankrupt, somebody else buys their company and runs it in the ground? That owner has paid for 10 years of lease, but it's all somewhat of a risk, and that makes you understand better why you want to try to lease to a more proven, long-standing company, so that things like that aren't likely to happen. But you wouldn't let anybody go into a 10-year lease unless you had escalations in the base rent built in to protect the owner. You know, because rent's
That makes sense.
10 years from now, 7 years from now, you could get a lot more than $16 a square foot.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
What should a client know before purchasing a property for development, and how do rezoning laws impact what a buyer can do with that property?
When you say, how does a rezoning law impact that property or that buyer? Generally speaking, a rezoning change is by request. So someone is wanting to make it happen, right?
Right.
So generally speaking, you're not going to do that unless you're going to raise the value of that property. If it's residential now, but you could turn it into multifamily, and on that 5 acres that used to have one house, if you could put 30, then that may be well worth doing, right? So you appeal for that's a land use change. There's a difference between rezoning and just changing the land use. And every municipality has its own rules and how they're defined. So what's accepted in residential 2 in Callaway may not be the same thing at all in Lynn Haven or Panama City. So you have to go to that planning department, understand their guidelines, and they're available online, and help the people that are trying to make the change understand what steps they need to go through to try to appeal for that. But generally speaking, you don't just walk into the planning department anymore like you did back in my day. Well, I'm still there, but you have to get a meeting, and then you meet with the planners and you tell them what you have in mind. And then they explain the process of going through a land use change application. And if you feel, and they feel like it's probably worth going for, then you could plunk down your $3,000 or whatever it's going to take to apply for that change. But then you'll go to the planning board for their recommendation. And as part of that process, you have to help mail out so many letters that pay for the stamps for the coverage of residential people or everybody around in a 500 feet, and it may be different in some areas, who may be affected by such a land change. If I have a residential property and this open field behind me has been agricultural for years, I maybe don't want to have apartments that close to me. And I have a chance then, because they have to alert me that application's been made. So you have your landowners surrounding the property or adjacent to the property that are alerted that an application has been made. Then they have an opportunity to voice their opinion at the planning board meeting, and then another planning board meeting. And if they make it that far, the planning board wants it to happen, and the planning board says, we agree this is a good thing for our community. It doesn't violate where we have been planning our community or our city to go with our future land use map. We feel like there are utilities available for such more density on that street or in that area, because you may not have the utilities there. So you may find that out in your planning meeting. You know, you can't get 600 apartments here. You don't have any water and sewer. And we're certainly not going to dig 600 septic tanks. So you would find out right away that I can't take this parcel and do what I thought okay. You don't even pay for your application fee, you learned. But if it's only, you guys talked about an example earlier, I don't know how long we have, but.
No, let's go into it.
Yeah.
So there was a development, around
a great example was an application on Frankfurt Avenue, north of Highway 390, adjacent to the west side of Sweet Bay, the whole project Sweet Bay, but it was a separate landowner, individual landowner with a piece. It wasn't owned by Sweet Bay, and we had a developer make an offer for purchase, but it had to be contingent upon a land use change. Well, that was a perfect example, I feel, of how the planning board felt the recommendation was sound. There's going to be utilities. The highway or the road would probably have to be widened, but then your DOT study would tell you that. And if it were to have to be widened based on the density of that new project, then they would probably have the developer have to put their own lane in to be concurrent with what they thought was going to be the increase in traffic. So I'm not buying into the fact that the traffic was the problem, because I'm working with a group right now that's got acreage kind of just north of Mosley High School. It's a big property. And they got a development order from the city of Lynn Haven, but the city of Lynn Haven Commission said that if they're going to do a project, then they have to put an entire lane in the length of the project, because they're worried about the impact of traffic, already intense going into Mosley High School, And so I don't buy that there wasn't a solution on the traffic. What I think happened was the same thing happened to me on a parcel a couple of years ago, was that when it came down to the planning board saying this is good with us, makes sense to us, we're going to get more tax money, we have the utilities, if this person wants to do this, we'll recommend it. And 9 times out of 10, if the planning board recommends it to the commission, your commission are regular folks like you and me. They don't necessarily know about land development or traffic concurrency. And so that's why you have a planning board. These are professionals who say to the commission, yes, we recommend this. But because the public is allowed to respond, everyone in that general area of Frankfurt got notice that this was an activity in motion to change this and put a multifamily density unit there, then there were enough citizens who came to those meetings and said, we don't want this. We don't want this. We think it's too much traffic. Yeah, whatever. My kid rides his bike on that street. Whatever they're going to say. And this is why it works, because people have a right to voice their opinions and so on.
I had several texts and calls about it from residents in the Kings Point area.
The same thing that happened to me on the property across from Sweet Bay, that is now going to be a senior citizen development. 3 years ago, we went through that process, and we couldn't get it annexed in the city because the people behind it objected. And quite frankly, one of them was the daughter of a commissioner.
Wow.
We had no shot.
Yeah.
So welcome to the real world. That's life. So I think that when you have a commission or commissioners who feel like they're going to lose support of their base, if they that could carry the day. It really shouldn't, I don't guess.
Even though you had the planning commission saying, hey, we recommend it,
right.
They shot it down because residents didn't want it. And you say you don't buy the traffic. So why do you think they were complaining, the residents?
Well, I think the residents have the right to complain, and they did. And the commission felt we're going to listen to these people and
that's kind of the information that I was getting.
And we're going to not allow this because we think their concerns are real. Okay.
I think also when one person complains, it just attracts other people to jump on the same boat with the same reasoning, even though they may all have their own reasoning.
Well,
that one reasoning stuck.
Exactly. But what I gathered from what you were saying is Sweet Bay is developing so
Yeah.
much.
Well, now
that
Sweet
there's-
Bay's developing more homes than that at
there's-
the end of Frankfurt.
So maybe it's a thing where it's like, well, we can't take on Sweet Bay in St. Joe, but we can take on this $3 million
Right.
parcel.
Yeah, there may
where,
be something
there's
said with that.
A bunch
Yeah.
of, apartments going up, and we don't want to have to deal with the traffic there on Frankfurt in the morning. I don't know,
Yeah.
but
It's
failed.
always difficult, I mean, to expand because somebody's always going to not have as quiet a neighborhood as they used to. I mean, but are we going to grow or are we not? And it's never going to make everybody happy.
Right.
And I get it. If I had a home at the Ombre, and I bought fairway frontage home on a golf course, and then a storm happens, the Ombre closes shop, and there's no longer a golf course. Now they're going to put a house right behind my fence. That's not going to make me happy, but sometimes change is something we can't control.
So you kind of walked us through the rezoning process, and we talked about financing for commercial and residential. What long-term trends do you see shaping commercial real estate over the next 5 to 10 years?
Ooh, long-term trends. Well, I think in my own opinion, I will only expect that it will always be cyclical. It will always have an up and down capacity based on the conditions of the market, to include interest rate, to include how the market and the confidence, in our country as a whole. In other words, is it time to put millions out there to invest in business, or is it time to hold back? And right now, it's just been holding back, in my opinion. But I think it's always going to be cyclical. I don't know. In Bay County, what do I expect to see a surge in certain types of development? I don't know. I mean,
you've had a fantastic year this year. You're probably number one in our company right now. You hear this a lot when real estate is feast or famine, but I feel like that's even more prevalent in commercial real estate because
Absolutely.
you're not doing 40 transactions a year.
Right,
If
no.
you did, you would be.
And they
well,
take
if you
over a
recall,
year.
a couple of years back in our sales meeting, I was offering to do yard work. So it's really
I do recall that actually.
Yes.
I was kidding, but not.
But kind
You
of
were
not.
like, actually, I will.
No,
know
I mean,
someone.
it's definitely a
you
big
could go-
difference between residential and commercial. And people think, oh, residential is easy, big bucks. Oh, not at all. No. In fact, if you have a contract that you've spent hours and hours and tons of time with and didn't spend that time nurturing other contracts and it doesn't go through, well, you maybe go for months without a check at all.
You only get paid if it closes.
Yeah,
And I
that's
know
our world. We only get paid if something closes.
That's right.
We had a
So-
coworker on that deal that we just spoke about that didn't go through, and I know she had several hundred hours into that deal, and
Right.
she was positive that it was going to go through, and I kept telling her, I don't think this is going through, like
Yeah.
what from what the residents, or even
Yeah, there was a lot of
saying.
momentum for
There
that to
was-
happen. And
Yeah, but that's not common.
felt bad.
Normally, if the
Yeah.
planning commission
I-
recommends approval,
Right.
normally, like you said, these board of
Yeah, normally you
commissioners,
take-
they're not well versed on this
Yeah.
stuff, so they'll just kind of
Well-
go with a recommendation, right?
Right.
That's kind of abnormal.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. As I said before, 9 times out of 10, if the planning board recommends it either to the county or to a city municipality, it's going to be done.
So that process from going through planning board to being recommended to the commission, is that done during the due diligence period or after closing?
What's that?
That process of rezoning
Right.
and going through, is that done during due diligence period of the contract?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You wouldn't close
Right.
and actually buy the property
Okay.
until you knew that you had the zoning that will allow for your project.
In that example in particular, that buyer was out a lot of money
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they had
imagine.
a civil engineer in there.
Yeah.
Right.
They had a development order. The application fees. Survey. So they were out that money. It was a loss.
Right. And we have to kind of help shepherd someone through that. But generally speaking, again, the contract length of time from start to finish is probably a year on average in commercial, where it's 30, 45 days in residential.
Yeah.
And it can be, definitely feast or famine, but
But you've
we've
had
known
a
that.
couple of big deals closed. Can you speak on that? What's going to happen with those that you have closed?
well,
Or
the one that was
am I putting
the
you on the
senior
spot?
living center, it's under construction now on 390 across from the middle part of Sweet Bay. That took 2.5 years to close.
No.
And so, and I might have
Wow.
mentioned that earlier, but, and sometimes you have projects that get held up abnormally long, and then they just happen to be timing with perhaps another one that was a 6 or 8 month project. But nothing happens quickly, nothing happens easily. I could have retired a long time ago if I could have closed half of the contracts I've written up.
Wow.
Maybe 25%, because that many commercial projects, they just get yanked off the table somewhere in that process of finding out what's wrong with the building or property, or what's the cost of developing that land, or maybe there's just not enough usable land there for their project, and numbers of issues. But all of that it costs money to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah,
there's
they
so
wouldn't
much
be in there
time.
spending that money if they didn't want to try to buy the property.
And there's so much time that's passed. I mean, what if they find another one that maybe they can net more? Or, there's just so many variables when you
I don't think the commercial buyer gets into a contract lightly. In
Gotcha.
other words, it's not like, I'm gonna hold this one,
Just because of the
while I'm
cost.
looking. I think they pretty well said, I'm willing to invest money in this, let's go. But certainly, I could see, I don't remember a particular instance where that happened, where they were under contract, they're in inspection, they just said, no, I found one across the street I like better. I should have done a better job right from the beginning of taking them to the right project that really fit their needs.
Are there any myths in commercial real estate that you want to debunk?
Well, I already did. It's like easy, fast, big money. It's,
Yeah.
I hope that's been debunked. But no, I think the myth might be that as a residential practitioner, that's something that you couldn't be comfortable with just a little bit of work and a little bit of effort to certainly learn it. You didn't learn your business in a month or two.
Right.
And if you want to do commercial, you can certainly do it. Just get in there and start learning and understanding the things that we've talked about with regard to the development of the land. Selling an existing building would be pretty easy. Instead of a home inspector, you get a structural contractor in to look at that building, and you get an HVAC and a plumber, and you say it's got a clean bill of health or it doesn't. It's got mold or it doesn't. It's like a house. But it just, don't expect it to come quick. But there's no reason why you shouldn't try to get involved in a commercial transaction. And the best advice I think that I could give is partner with a commercial practitioner on your first couple of potential transactions. And you will learn as you're doing so
Yeah.
the business to a
Yeah.
greater degree. Just like you might have had a partner on your
we
first
did.
couple of
She
home
brought
sales.
me on.
Right. But it's no different. The leasing, the selling, buying, all that get you and there's some great commercial practitioners in our market.
Yeah.
Why
You know.
isn't there any? Why isn't there that many women in commercial real estate in this area? I know I can just speak for this area.
There was a meeting in 1994. No, I'm kidding.
I knew where that was going.
You know
now
this is
I'm
true,
going to tell you,
though.
I have dealt with some wonderful
Okay, good.
female commercial practitioners in larger markets. I just think
Right.
that
But why
because,
is not here?
I don't know, we've had a couple over the
All
years
of
that
the
I've been
commercial
here.
guys have 20, 30, 40 years in. I mean,
There's
that's
just not a lot of commercial specializing in
Uh,
commercial real estate.
I mean,
we need to work on that.
there is absolutely no reason
Right,
for that to be the case.
right.
Because it's certainly not a male or female thing by any stretch.
Right.
But I think we just haven't had the right young lady
Mm-hmm.
say, I'm gonna learn that. It just sometimes you just kind of accept the way things are,
Gotcha.
and that's just crazy talk. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no reason for it not to be that case here.
Absolutely.
But you don't have, you talked about these folks that have got 20, 30 years, like myself. how many young men practitioners of commercial only can you name?
Very few.
Yeah, very.
Exactly.
few.
So it's not a
About it.
woman or man thing.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
that's very true.
It's a heck of a commitment to make,
absolutely.
and you got to be willing to work a year or two without getting paid much,
Yeah.
and build yourself a clientele. There's only one or two under age 30, I think.
Wow.
No, I mean under age 40.
Yeah.
Well, with your circle of influence, and you know, obviously, it's incredible. Can you please contact somebody that you know with Publix or Walmart, and let's get one out in Southport, please. We need a Walmart or a Publix. I know Grassy Point just was sold, and they're gonna do some exciting things, hopefully entertainment and food,
Right.
related. But we need a Walmart in Southport, please, Brian. Let's do
These
this.
things, in my experience, and anytime I've had a piece of property where I might get a nibble or a bobber moving around, there's somebody like that big, right? I've learned in those conversations that it's all about the numbers and only.
That's what I was going to say. The
and
traffic
only
maybe
about
isn't
the
there.
numbers.
Maybe the traffic.
There was a talk, 5 years ago after the hurricane when we're going to have that Publix come downtown.
Oh yeah,
No, the numbers
It didn't
would
work.
not
didn't work.
justify it. It was not enough people within so many,
They need those cars.
feet. It's not just miles; it's feet. And different criteria are not going to be compromised.
Gotcha. I
and
was hoping they were going to do that private school in Fanning. Do you remember about this? Do you remember about this?
I don't.
I heard
It was this, all the talk and rave was going to be this private school. They were going to have like these sports, like the sailing, and then it was going to be like princes and princesses. Their kids were going to go here because the tuition was going to be just outrageous. I was hoping that was going to go through, and then it would bring more people to that area. Second, people that want to purchase a second home to be close to
Right.
their kids. Why didn't that go through? Do you know?
I don't.
Man,
I mean, I heard rumbling about it. I wasn't involved.
I was like, man, we're gonna have a
but
Walmart.
but look at the
We're gonna
growth that
have-
we have had. I mean,
Right, that's true.
Panama City.
That's
From
true.
the time I've been here, I've always told how it was kind of wanted to stay a smaller town.
So what year did you come here, in the 70s or 80s?
I got here in 2001.
Oh, 2001. Okay. So I grew up here, and I remember going down 23rd Street on like a 6 o'clock at night or whatever. There's nobody. I'm the only car on
Right.
23rd Street.
Yeah.
And now, I think we talked about this previously. I went downtown Harrison, which used to be a ghost town
Right.
when I was in high school, which was 2006, 2005-ish. And you could go downtown Harrison at 8 o'clock at night and you don't see anything, right?
Right.
Now, it is like I couldn't find a parking spot.
Booming.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
this town is definitely,
It's
built
going
up.
in. It's going in that direction.
Mhm.
It's grown. It's going to grow, and it is growing. And I've heard that it's been forecasted that we'll be 100% of the growth we were after Hurricane Michael in 5 years from now. So that means we'd be 300 to
Wow.
350,000. But I don't know where things like that are going to happen. That where the neighbors are going to have to get outvoted on expansion behind them.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're going to have more commercially zoned property. Where are these people going to work? All of this is working in that direction. But we got an amazing amenity to be here on the Gulf of Mexico. And,
Absolutely.
And, the place we have to go is north.
Yeah.
The water's that way. So 77, 79, all of that, I think is going to be where the growth is. Up 231. 231's a nightmare for commercial growth because of the railroad tracks running alongside.
Right.
But
Well, I love to hear it. I hope it goes north. And 79, obviously you have a lot of residential development happening. We have the airport, I was hoping that was going to bring
Right.
more, which it will.
It will.
So Brian, is there anything that we didn't ask you about commercial real estate that you would like to elaborate on?
no, I feel like it was a really neat session on covering across the board foundations of it. I would be glad to come back if you want to talk specifically about investment in retail income producing properties, because that's one area I think that is very important, that a typical agent and broker can help people with if they understand how to break down what the real costs are, or why sometimes a 5% return is better than a 7% return on a certain project. But that's a whole nother conversation.
Well, we'll have you back for sure.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Anybody that's interested in investing in commercial real estate, Brian Hinton is your guy. Brian, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you
Brian.
soon. Thanks.
My pleasure.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.